We cut our sanding blocks, and what I have left is this piece that is, it's about 6.5 inches. They're all going to be just a little bit different, most likely. And out of this piece, I need to get my 3 joints out of it: the miter, the dado, and the rabbet. Now, when we start with this, we're going to lay out the miter first, but we're going to cut it very last. Okay? So looking at this board, I'm just going to take the combination square. I'm going to use the 45-degree side on here, and I'm going to choose one end. Doesn't really matter which end. And I'm going to draw that 45 on there, making sure that this was tight and that it is exactly 45. Later on, when we cut this, we need to make sure that we cut it exactly at 45 degrees because that's how we're graded. I'll use a speed square with the degrees marked on it, and for every degree that it's off, it's 5 points off. Okay, and it's worth 50 points. If it's 45 degrees, it's 50 points. If it's 49 degrees, it'll be 45 points. Okay, all of these different joints are worth 50 points, and they're based off of how accurate you are. Okay, so now that we have the miter on here, the next step is to draw the dado and the rabbet on here. And it doesn't really matter where the dado goes in here, it's just that it's got to fit without it running into the miter or running into the rabbet. Okay, so here's how we lay out the dado. We take our sanding block that we cut previously, and I'm going to place it on here. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to take the square, and I'm just going to draw a line, make sure that I get a square line across. Okay, so now I have my square line across. Now I take that sanding block and I line it up with that line, and I hold it, and I draw it there. There is the width of the dado. Okay? Now, the depth of the dado is a half the board thickness. So we need to determine where half is on here. This board happens to be 3/4 of an inch thick. So we need to find half of 3/4. Anytime you want to find half of a fraction, it's very easy. If you just double the bottom number, that is half the fraction. So in this case, 3/4 of an inch wide, half of that, double the bottom number, 3/8 is the answer. So we're going to use the tape measure, and a little trick you can do is you can set up your block like this, put on the tape measure, and it'll hold that, and I'm gonna line it up with this. Now my top edge is over here, my top face, and so then I'm just going to line it up with an inch mark. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 8 right there. I'm going to turn it over. Same thing, based off of the face right over here. Onto this other side. 1, 2, 3, 8. Skipping the 16th inch lines, and there's the 1/8 inch mark that I did. Okay. Now I'm going to take my square and I'm going to draw these lines down that 3/8 of an inch. Okay, and then last of all, I need to connect that line. And if you use your finger like this as a little marking gauge, kind of gauge your pencil where it goes, and then it holds your pencil, and you can draw that line like that. That's the depth. We're also going to do that on this side. Okay, so I need to draw these lines down. So it gives me a reference for cutting, and then I'm going to just take and then draw my 3/8 inch line using my marking gauge finger like that. So there is what we need to cut out of the date for the dado. Now to do this, we're going to do kind of the same thing. Ultimately, the way I will grade it is the sanding block has got to fit right inside of there, and it should be snug. It should fit down in. It shouldn't have much play. It needs to go the right depth. Every 1/16 of an inch that is too big or too small or too deep or not deep enough loses 5 points. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to cut, same thing, we're going to cut on the inside of the line and on the inside of the line so that we don't make this too small. Okay? Now, I'm going to place this in the clamp, and this is why I don't cut the miter just yet, so that I can have plenty of room to clamp this to the table or to inside the vices. Tighten it down real tight. I'm going to use the hand saw, the back saw again. Same thing, I'm going to try to line that up really straight across. Get it growing. That's looking pretty good. And now, this time we're only cutting halfway down. So kind of watch, take a look, see, make sure that you're stopping right about halfway. Put just a little more on this side. Cut evenly, and then we'll do the other side. Okay, looks like that side's deep enough, this side's not quite deep enough. Okay, so now we should be in good shape there. The next step is to clean this out. To do that, we're going to use the chisel and the hammer. Okay, so we're going to chisel. We're going to chisel, and we're going to take slices down in. Slice. When I say slices, what I'm meaning by that is I'm going to take a little bit at a time. A little bit at a time. Okay, multiple slices. If you try to take it all at once, it's going to cause problems. You're going to get big breakouts, and the whole board may come apart. But instead, we're going to just take small slices. We're also going to cut only about halfway down, and then we'll turn it around and come in from the other direction to cut in. If you try to go all the way, this backside will blow out and you'll have a big mess. Okay? Same thing, get it into the clamp. Careful with the chisels, don't let them hit metal. They're only made for cutting wood. Just gonna take the chisel, put it on here close, and the hammer, and just tap it down. And sharper the chisel, the better they work. This one's a little bit on the dull side. Well, I think we'll make it, it'll be okay. Notice I'm stopping about halfway. As I get closer to the depth, then I don't take as much. Okay, and I'm actually going to stop just a little bit short, because then I can clean that up with my hand more in a minute. Turn it around. And then do the same from this side. Okay, so there it's really close. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back in this direction. Turn it around here. I'm just going to do a little bit more fine chiseling. If I hold the chisel flat, and then I can just go in here and clean up any of the high spots. And try to flatten this out just a little bit. Like I said, if the chisel's not very sharp, you can bring it to me and I can get it sharpened up. This one I'll sharpen after I'm done with this demo. Okay, but it's looking lots better and flat there. This clamp does not want to come apart. And I flip it around. gonna go just a little bit from this other side. Okay, so that's looking really good. Now the question is, does this fit? So we're gonna place it in there. It should fit just like that. It shouldn't move back and forth. This one could be just a titch snugger, but there's not really any gap on the side, so that's good. My depth is all equal, so that right there is gonna would be 50 point joint right there. That's how you do the dado, okay? All right, next step. The rabbet. The rabbet is done very similarly, and we need to lay out the rabbet first. To start with, I'm going to take the sanding block, put it on its face on the table, take the end of the board that we're going to cut the rabbet on, slide it right up against that. Okay? Take a pencil and mark. There is the width of the rabbet. Very simple way to do that. Then we need to make our marks the same down the sides as we did the dado, and then we're gonna go across the end. So I'm gonna use the straight edge again. Draw down. Straight edge again here, draw down. I need to measure the 3/8 of an inch. So I'm gonna set this back up. I'm gonna measure 3/8 of an inch. 1, 2, 3, skipping the 16th inch lines, right there. Same on this side, make sure you go from the top face just to be consistent. 1, 2, 3. Notice it doesn't matter what full inch mark I use, just use a full inch mark because it's the same on between every inch. Then I'm going to take marking gauge like that, line up the pencil like that, and then I'm going to do the same across like that. And if you want to try to use a straight edge and draw that line and stuff, it's a little tough because it's small, but you can do it. But I find that using your finger as the marking gauge works really well. Now, we have a couple options on this. We want to do the same thing. We want to cut the depth first, and then we need to cut this way. But the question is do we use a chisel? We could, but I like to use the saw and cut down and then clean up with the chisel. It works out better, whereas the chisel, because we're cutting into end grain, it can cut out or cut in, which you may not want. Okay, so I'm just going to do the saw, which tends to be the easiest way. Same thing, we're going to cut on this time, we're going to cut on this inside edge. Okay, so you may not see the line, but I'm following that line on this side. Looks good. Always have it clamped down so you're not trying to hold things. Okay, looks like we're about there. Loosen this up, and now I'm gonna come and cut down this direction. Same thing, try to leave just a little bit of that line. Cut straight up and down with that line that you've drawn on the sides. Go slow. If there's anything to clean up, you can clean it up with the chisel. You may need to go and just kind of clean stuff up with the chisel a little bit. But the same thing. This should fit, should be flush right here, which this is. Okay. So when I put this in there, it should be flush. That looks good. And should be flat across there. That looks good. Okay, 50 points for that. Last cut we do is the miter.